Ronald Kinsella is an artist, an illustrator, and an author. He's written numerous books, including science fiction for the mainstream media, some of which are also illustrated by him. He also jointly hosts a paranormal radio show, Twin Souls, along with his identical twin brother Philip, which is part of a global network, the Paranormal UK Radio Network. He's also appeared on national television. Recently, he released well, I call it a hard-hitting book on UFOs, aliens, and the like. It's called The Digital Demon, and he's about to join us and talk about it. Hi, Ron.
Hello, Dean. A pleasure to be on your show again.
Fantastic. We spoke a few months ago. We had a really great chat then. It was when Philip Mantle released the book on UFOs for young people, which you illustrated for.
Yes.
But what people may not know is that you're also an experiencer, and this book you've released, The Digital Demon, it may ruffle some feathers, but let's look at it shortly. But firstly, your own experiences. Let's briefly talk about what happened to you as a child.
Yes, I mean, this opened a can of worms for me, not immediately, because in 1982, I had an encounter with what people call aliens. I don't know exactly what they were, but they were not natural. And basically, I was snatched up from my bed one night in 1982 and taken into this thing that was hanging over the house. I was just zipped through the loft or attic, if you prefer, zipped through towards this thing hanging above the house. It was dark. It was darker than space itself. I couldn't see exactly what it was. There was something there, but I was taken into it, and I remembered I was transported or whatever into this kind of wheelchair, this modern-looking wheelchair, very modern. It didn't conform to our kind of typical wheelchair. It was just very modern, and I was partially paralyzed. And I couldn't move. I could move to a degree, but I couldn't turn. And there was this strange man standing before me, and there was an operating table behind them. That much I do remember. And the left was curved. It was squat. The room was quite squat. But to the right, strangely, I don't know what was there, so I'm not going to embellish. I couldn't really discern what was there. My focus was more on the men standing before me. There were three of them. And there was one behind me. I knew that. I couldn't see him, but I felt there was someone behind me. I think we know when someone's standing behind you. There was one of them behind me. Mm-hmm. Now, the strange thing about these men was that they were completely covered from head to toe in a gear that is completely baffling. To me, I would make a semblance to radiation gear, but they had masks on that were equivalent to our World War II soldiers, gas masks. They looked like gas masks because they had circular lenses for the eyes, had two lenses. I couldn't see their eyes. In fact, I couldn't discern anything normal about them. To me, they were strange men. To me, they were like, I called them the doctors, because the room I was put in had a medical feel to it. It certainly immediately was a sterile medical feel. I can't remember if it was messy or tidy. It looked okay, I suppose. The details, the particulars are quite vague. I'm not going to embellish on them. But beside the chair, there was a utensil rack or a trolley. I would think it was a trolley. And there were some instrumentations on it, some some bizarre looking gadgets on it. I didn't pay much attention to them at that time, but as I was staring at these men and they were looking back, they didn't speak, by the way. The three in front didn't speak, they just stood there. The one behind me spoke, and I was right to confirm there was one behind me. Now, he seemed to be in charge, this one behind me. He was the chief. That's what I got from him. He was the one pulling the strings. Mm-hmm. And the first thing he said, and it's very bizarre, the very first thing he said, and I have never forgotten, the first thing he said was, "We're going to perform an operation on you, Ronald."
Wow.
Now, when he said my name, I remembered, and I've said this again and again, I flinched because he knew who I was, but I didn't know who he was. I couldn't even see him. I tried to turn, but I just couldn't do it. We call it paralysis. I just couldn't move. It wasn't like this force was keeping me strapped down. It's just I
Mhm.
just couldn't do it. I don't know what it was. I guess we call it paralysis. His voice was British. That's strange, isn't it? British,
Yeah, yeah.
acquired, middle-aged. I'll never forget it. It was authoritative. So he was the one in charge. And I remembered when he said about the operation, I was very frightened. Being thrown into this position of being in this strange room with these strange men, and now he's telling me there's going to be an operation. It's absolutely bizarre circumstances. Now, I must make it clear, I was not dreaming. This was not a dream or sleep paralysis. It's not brought on by any mental disability. I'm physically fit. I was even then. The only thing that was wrong with me, I was colorblind.
Hmm.
So, and I knew this was happening. But of course, you're a 13-year-old kid in 1982. You're arrested by these strange men. But the worst of it was his authority. To me, they were like, you can't argue with them. So he came across, or they came across as people who took charge, and I was in their zone. So I felt as if they had to do this. As bizarre as it was, they were really strange, but I thought they had to do this, but I didn't want it. And for some strange reason, I knew it was to do with the head. Now, I might be wrong, completely wrong, but for some reason, when he said about the operation, I thought it was to do with the head, some neurological problem.
Hmm.
Thinking about it now, why on earth were they completely garbed in these ridiculously overrated get-up? Even your neurologists don't
Yeah.
need all that paraphernalia. I mean, they're clever. Our neurologists are brilliant people, but they don't need all that get-up. But anyway, I pleaded with him. I remembered I was pleading with him not to have this blasted operation. But he said, now I can't remember exactly the order he said it or what he said. The first I can completely remember. Something to the effect of, no, this has to be done. It is for your own good. And then he reiterated, I promise you, we are not going to harm you. Now, I trusted him there.
Hmm.
He did have conviction, and I did believe him. I believe he was telling the truth there. They're not going to harm me. But it was the thought of this procedure. So what he did was he took my left hand. Now, I recently published an article in a magazine, and for some strange, bizarre reason, it's ridiculous. I got the hand mixed up. It's the left hand. I've always reiterated the left hand, but I made a typing error because I did say he grasped my left hand and then used the instrument on my right. It is the left hand,
Right.
absolutely.
Okay.
So that was when I reread the article, I thought, oh no, I thought, what on earth? When you have a break and you go back and you don't check it, but it was the left hand. He took from the utensil rack this instrument. Now it was like a rod, and it was a smaller rod combined into it, and it had a nodule on the end. And on the left hand, he pressed the nodule on the top of it, and it went out. That was it. So they'd obviously knocked me out. The next thing I remembered, I was dropped from it. So evidently they'd done whatever they set out to do. I have no idea how long it took. I don't even know what time it was. It was at night. So I was dropped from this thing, just dropped as I had come
Hmm.
up. But this time when I was dropped, I felt this static embracing me again and again and again. Very prominent. It wasn't going up, but it certainly was coming down from the thing, whatever it was. I never got a clear look at it. And I went through the roof or attic and right back down to the bed. And I even felt the bump of the mattress. That was very disconcerting because I knew it was happening. They gently placed me back. I mean, they took care of me to put me back gently.
Hmm.
Um, that would have been it, I thought, because I knew, this was horrendous. But then they projected on the ceiling. This was a hologram. I knew this was a hologram of a huge head of a Cheshire cat. And now he
Wow.
was he was electric blue. I remember that. He was wavering like water, but he wasn't really moving. It was an illusion. It was to give him movement, to make him look like he was moving. I knew as a kid, back in 1982, hologram technology was extremely crude. I mean, you went to see Jaws 3 with 3D glasses on, and they were
Yeah.
appalling. No disrespect for them at the
Sure.
time. They
Wish
tried.
wish they'd never made yours three.
Yeah. But they projected this thing so brilliantly. We need lenses to capture light to give us the illusion of a hologram. They could just suspend this in thin air and control it. The head of the Cheshire Cat, he was awful. He was massive. He filled up the ceiling. He was grinning down at me. I could even see his teeth in his wide eyes. He was just looking at me, and then it went. Now that is bizarre. I will say after this, Dean, it screwed me up big time because I mean, then you didn't talk about it to anyone. You couldn't about mediums. You couldn't about UFOs to people. You just didn't do it. It's not the sort of thing, the narrative you would follow, especially with your tutors and your peers. You just don't do it. I sensibly kept quiet, but I did tell Philip about this incident. What it did after that was it forced me to, even though they took me through the ceiling, it forced me to prop books up against the door. It forced me to put books up my back, to stuff them up my back. Why? Heavens know why. I have made a reference to that in there. It did all kinds of strange things. Fortunately, I never saw them again, ever. I never saw them. But, you know, I didn't even consider them to be spacemen at the time, or whatever people call alien. I just thought they were bizarre and strange. And the cat, their goodbye kiss, or the icing on the cake, was the thing that completely eluded me. But, you know, Dean, I thought about that for 30 years. I mean, I was 13, I'm in my 50s now. So given me plenty of time to think about it. And I think I've worked out what the symbolism of the cat was, or why they
Okay.
showed it to me. Oh, do you want me to tell you? Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
The cat always eluded me. I could never understand. It was so different from what they were, whatever they were. I don't know what they were. And what they'd done, I have no idea what they'd done. But the cat, it suddenly one day dawned on me 30 years later when I was working on the first book, Twin Souls, which was published by Capel Bann. That was the first of it in 2012. They published a book here in England, a new age publishing company, wonderful, wonderful team. They published the first book. And so I think it's then when I came to the conclusion that what they did was, because they didn't want me to remember it, or if I did, and then we'll get to this point in a minute that eludes me about them, their power and what they can't seem to do. Since they didn't want me to remember it, they projected this thing or plucked it out of my head, because I had seen Alice in Wonderland. I have seen it. I've seen the film. They plucked it out. So it goes to show they know us very well. They plucked it. They might have, I might be wrong, but they plucked it out and projected it so that when I go and see a psychologist and tell them they showed me the Cheshire Cat, oh, hang on a minute, wait there.
Yeah.
You've been down the rabbit hole. You're getting confused.
Right.
Yes, you know where it's going, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
You know where this is going. So very, very smart on their part. But always the thing that miffed me or completely eluded me is the fact that, well, if they can knock you out during an operation or an alleged operation they performed, why on earth couldn't they just knock me out prior to being taken? Done what they need to do and put me back safely without any knowledge of it. It would have saved everything. That even their own presence would not have been known. They didn't. I believe they can, but they didn't. And there's a clue in that because they evidently want you to see them for some reason.
Yeah.
As to why, I don't know. I mean, not to write books
and that's a common thing we hear amongst experiencers, is that they got the feeling that they wanted them to see them.
They can knock out other people, but they let you see them. Now, you know, I've had people ask me after this incident with the doctors, that's what I refer to them, is, you know, did he speak using his mouth? Well, I can't tell you that. The illustration I did of them, the first I've ever done, this part here, the mouthpiece, I've elaborated. I think you can understand, to give an idea of what they look like. Certainly their eyes were round, their lenses. But the bottom piece, I'm not too sure about. I can't remember, but they were covered. So I wouldn't know if he spoke, and I couldn't even see him. So I wouldn't know if he spoke using his voice or if it was telepathy. I couldn't tell you. I'm not going to embellish anything on that. That's just what happened. You know, so it was very, very, very bizarre. I was just going to raise another point about them. I've just forgotten, which was relevant to it, about this strange meeting. Yes, that's it. Now, I said I never had an operation in my life. I did a year ago. I had an operation on my prostate. They were looking for cancer. I had to go through, as men do, middle-aged. It's not very nice, bless them. But we have to go through you have to go through one and the other and then the other, and then you're in the operating theatre. They put me into general. But when they did, what was interesting, and I'm medically ignorant. I don't know anything about operations. When our natural doctors, when they were going to perform this operation for the prostate, when they were going to put me under, on the table, they put the needle in the left hand exactly where they had put the nodule. I
Right.
remembered it's the very bizarre thing, even before that operation with our natural doctors, our good doctors, even before that, just as they put that in, I remember thinking on the table before I was put under, my goodness, that's where he stuck the nodule. That's where he put it. There must
Wow.
be relevance there. There must, I don't know what it is, but I'm just giving it to you straight, Dean. And I've, believe me, I've thought about it. I mean, I've been asked if I was sexually abused as a child, whether this could be psychological trauma. No, no, no. So
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
happened there, I can't tell you.
Yeah. Well, the digital demon, I got the impression reading it that you've become frustrated over the years with, I'm not sure misinformation is the word that's being put out there, but it's kind of close. But you just needed to kind of set the record straight.
Yes, that's a good point. Absolutely, Dean. Absolutely. I'm frustrated at the fact that, you see, what happened to me, I'll never know. I mean, I don't know if there were spacemen, if they're interdimensional, if they're a part of us that can manifest reality, something that we're completely unaware of. Could they be demons? Could they be angels that were incarnate into that to save my life, to perform an operation on my head? I don't know. I have no idea. But certainly the frustration, Dean, yes. What it was many years later, when I got a bit older and hopefully wiser, a little bit wiser, I looked into these alien abductions, and I read a lot, especially about some of the famous cases of the 50s and 60s, where people were allegedly abducted. They might well have been. I'm not going to knock them. There's some I don't believe. I do not believe them, but we won't go down that road. But they believe they were taken by these people, and they were whisked off to space, and they came back. And these people, these spacemen, were very concerned with world peace, certainly of then the atomic warfare, and now nuclear. But they were very concerned, and they voiced their opinions of this. And I thought, this is ridiculous, because they're pinching people from all walks of life and telling them about their concerns for atomic warfare. What, for them to write a book on it, to preach it? I mean,
Hmm.
a number of things they could do. But these people, and then I found later on that the cracks began to form, in as much as stating that, well, they were voicing their concerns, and this is really drastic concern. It could cause a cosmic ripple, it destroy the earth, it could wipe out the human civilization, and God knows we don't want to do that. We need each other. We need each other. In this chaos of life, we've got to try and work things out. But their concerns were voiced very, very aptly in these books. You did nothing. If they were a power unto themselves with enormous technological advantage, which they would have, they could easily nullify those sites quite peacefully and quietly, do it while we're asleep. We build more of them, and they do the same again. And we think, well, damn, we can't work out what's going on. They're not working. There's no point building them. Every time we build them, they keep being nullified. Through this, on their behalf, cosmic concern, it makes sense. It's a deduction, a logical deduction. They didn't. It was a fallacy, Dean. I believe it's absolute rubbish. Either the people who were abducted were being lied to, or they've lied themselves. I don't know. I'm not going to knock them, but certainly I think anyone could, with a rational mind, can understand that it's quite pointless doing that. What on earth is going on? If
Mm.
they were so concerned, and they wouldn't go to your regular Joe blogs, no disrespect to them, they would certainly address their concerns either to the President of the United States, and if that doesn't go far enough, they would reveal themselves to the people to tell them, right, we're here, we've got a problem, we can try and fix it. Now, you will have those who will suggest that their law is they're not to interfere with us. Well, they've done that already because they're here.
Hmm.
So they're doing this out. It's a
Well,
contradiction.
if we can believe what they say where we've come from, well, they've interfered because they created us.
Yes, that is quite possible. That's right. And I am absolutely always open to all opinions and speculations. I won't knock anything. I may not believe them myself, but I will agree with them.
Hmm.
And always as a possibility. It is quite possible we were created by a master race. Quite possible, absolutely. Genetically enhanced, certainly from the hominid, to become more adaptable to Earth. I'm always open to that. The people, that wasn't me who came up with that theory, it's other people.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking into it, and I think it's absolutely feasible and very clever as well. The trouble is, because the stigma attached to the alien paradox has been so widespread, it's met with a degree of humor, dinner table topic. You know, people think, oh, well, there might be. Of course there is. Of course there is something going on. Where they're from, we don't know. There could be multiple species arriving, or they could be, as I feel more, they might be interdimensional. You see, we were more, in the 50s and 60s, interdimensionalism didn't come into it, really. You know, it was more out of space. You know, it was the fad thing, it was the in thing. But now our scientists have become clever, and God bless them. You know, they're looking into things, that believing that now dimensions are a possibility. Certainly interdimensional is a possibility, and I like that. I like that a lot, because it opens up a whole new paradox as far as these things we call aliens are concerned, or might be concerned.
Yeah, yeah. So what's the bottom line here? I mean, you know, Kenneth Arnold back in 1947 seemed to make what was seen then as a straightforward report of 9 disc-shaped objects flying past Mount Rainier in Washington. 3 days before that, the Maury Island incident happened. Arnold and Harold Dahl, the witness at Maury Island, were to meet in Washington a few weeks later or a month later. Dahl told him not to come because he'd just been, you know, intimidated by these men in black who told him that, you know, your family could be in trouble if you start to talk about this. And then not long after a couple of weeks after Kenneth Arnold saw the disc-shaped objects, Roswell happened.
Yes.
And that was all in a period of a couple of months. So what's the bottom line here? Is there an agenda going on? Because the UFO cover-up, you know, after speaking with a highly respected researcher like Dr. Irena Scott recently,
yes. She's lovely, yes.
That cover-up started well before 1947.
Yes, that's right. One thing is clear about this. One thing is very clear. The powers that be don't want us to know about them. That's the bottom line. They don't want us to know about them. I think the biggest blunder the military made is when the Roswell ship, we'll call it a ship because something of phenomenal significance smashed there. I mean, it was so controversial to begin with. I didn't even believe in it. It's ironic, to begin with, I didn't believe in it, even after the doctors, because I pushed them aside. There had to be some rational explanation to it all, but there wasn't. So it opens a can of worms. When the military actually stupidly and foolishly announced, and this is their own blunder, because if they tried to cover it up, they made the grave mistake of admitting it to begin with. Yeah. They had blatantly announced that they had captured a flying disc. But you see, at that time, the relevance, I believe, it wasn't realized, because what they had captured was of such phenomenal significance. They thought, oh my goodness, we've never had this before, or if we have, it's never been reported. We have to stop all this, cover it up, cover it up. So they come out with an absolute lie of announcing that it was a crashed weather balloon, and they have one of their gentleman on there, Marcel. Is it? No, not Jesse Marcel. Is it Jesse Marcel?
Jesse Marcel.
He was the gentleman who discovered. I think they've got one of their troopers on there holding this tin foil up, and they're all laughing and smiling. There it is. This is. But they're showing a top secret. They're showing the remnants of a top secret balloon. Now, why on earth would they do that? This just shows the desperation they needed to try and cover it up, so they get some tin foil and hang it up and say, "This is the Roswell ship." It wasn't. And then after that, I think it was down to Stanton Friedman who actually pursued it to death, you know, and good on him, because he opened it back up, didn't he?
Yep.
He pushed for the witnesses to come forward and the people to come clean about it. Although there is a lot of embellishments, as with everything, you have the good, the bad, and the ugly, people who lie about it. I do believe that some kind of ship crashed there, and the argument I make in Digital Demon is I personally myself realized a pattern to this, as you have said about the sightings of the UFOs over Washington, and you see them with Kenneth Arnold, he's witnessed them. Certainly the military have no control over them, so they'll cover it up. But one thing that struck me about these ships, there was a number of them that had crashed. And when they announced that the Roswell ship had been brought down by lightning, I was incredulous. No, it wasn't brought down by lightning. What if it wasn't? I'm not saying I can't prove that, but I find it extremely baffling to think that a ship of such technological
Mhm.
superiority that has traversed the enormous depths of space or traveled through an interdimensional tunnel can be defeated by a simple lightning bolt. It didn't wash. That was not a lightning bolt that brought it down. My opinion, my grandfather got me into Sherlock Holmes, and I'm glad he did. Even though Sherlock Holmes is fictitious, he tends to look at things um, from a logical point of view. He will just sit back and look at it. That's what I did with this Roswell ship. It was the first thing that I thought of when I was looking into this UFO, being the holy grail of crashes. But I started looking into it and I thought, what if it wasn't brought down by lightning? What if it was deliberately downed by them, not the military, by the masters of them? And what if they, as I read, there were other, I can't remember all of them, there are numerous other crashes around the world. What if they were made to look slightly different? The aliens made to appear slightly different to stop suspicion, to not raise suspicion that, these ETs are having a problem when it might be something completely different that's dropping these little trinkets on the earth for us to obtain technological know-how, or knowing that we had reached a point in time in the 50s, the 40s and 50s, when we were becoming very smart. War, the Second World War, always drives us further up the technological
Mhm.
ladder, because the good men and women, the good scientists, they search for faster ways to produce equipment or weapons that can certainly help us in a war, or technology that can assist in that. So they picked a point. It raised suspicions with me about, what if they were deliberately downed? It was a play, not in the sense we think, but they had conjured men, little men, genetically made them or cloned them, expendables,
Yeah.
used in a ship that was packed full of golden wonders, and then smashed here, smashed there, smashed there. And they're made to look different. I might be wrong. I admit that. I'm not saying this is set in stone. It's just a theory. That's all it is. It's a theory.
Yeah.
My theory. I had this a year ago. It was
Well,
published a year ago in this book that was set a year ago. But it just a suspicion, Dean.
I'm with you on the fact that these alien ships. I mean, if they can travel vast distances and avoid being struck by things like meteorites and whatnot along the way, and I mean, surely they can detect a lightning bolt or when it's going to hit and prepare themselves or get out of the way of it.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, this also another problem we have with this is that when people say, well, why would they do that? I mean, well, we have reached a technological age of wonderment where we could enhance even further if we understood how to build an atomic bomb. We could go one step further, and if they discovered this material or the remnants of this material that was deliberately downed, if it was deliberately downed, I'm not standing on any toes here because many people have different theories, and I respect that. As I said again, it's only theory. Well, there'd be enormous benefit to
Hmm.
us.
Yeah.
But then who would do that? I mean, this is the disconcerting thing about it. And I've always maintained the fact that if there was a superior intelligence, or whatever their origins, whatever kin they're from, whatever they are, interdimensional from outer space, you certainly wouldn't need to leave your realm. If you could build things like that, you would use them as your eyes and ears to scope certain areas or planets. We're doing it on Mars. We're sending the wonderful people at NASA are sending these incredible robots to Mars, acting as our eyes and ears, so they can get a better view of the planet. Hence, before colonization or planned colonization of the world. So it wouldn't be any surprise to me at all that something would build these things or make them smart enough to make these little men. And I don't mean to make them sound belittling by saying little men, but they
Yeah.
would be. I suppose they're very small creatures.
Yeah.
They could build these things to act as expendables in a crash, to pilot it here until it goes absolutely chaotic and smashes. you have to consider every aspect of this,
Yeah.
from this paradox.
Yeah. I mean, we talk about, they, the theory that they don't want to interfere with our progress. We're talking about them. So we've gone from bows and arrows over hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, and then all of a sudden, within 100 years, bows and arrows to landing people on the moon and sending expeditions to Mars. That's all within a 100-year period. So who are them? I mean, and what's their agenda, and who's going to be the ultimate benefactor of what they're trying to achieve?
Yes, that's the multi-million-dollar question, isn't it? Logically speaking, what you just said, Dean, is absolutely correct. 100 years ago, bows and arrows. Now we've reached a stage through thousands of years of evolution. We never really got far, not denouncing the evolution, but when you look at it, we didn't really get far. All they were doing, let's be humorous here, was just killing each other off. The humans, if someone invaded their land, they'd stab them, or if they had been disloyal to the royalty, they'd lose their head. So in when we look at the evolution, it's been very sluggish and slow, but we reached a point from the bow and arrow to the atomic age through war, I believe, as I said, does help to heighten technology on our behalf. And it did, my goodness, it did, because from it they stripped aircrafts to then develop after that jet propulsion. We went further and further and further, which is wonderful. So for extraterrestrials to intervene, or whatever they are at that time, would have been absolutely wonderful, because it was a point, and it would make sense. That point, the 1940s or 50s, was perfect. We're still naive. We're recovering from a serious, grave war. We battled each other, and on top of this, they smash these things into the earth and think, oh my goodness, what have we discovered? But of course, the paranoia of other countries from our point of view, like America with Russia or Germany at the time, would have caused them to create national secrecy and security on an unprecedented level. So of course they'd keep these things quiet, on top of not only from other countries, but their own kin. So they would silence it. And that was the smoking gun when they announced that they had captured a flying disc, and it is absolutely true. They had done that. They realized the implications and quickly devised a very clever program of silence is golden. Deny everything. It's like the say on X-Files, deny everything. Well, yes. It usually gets results, doesn't it?
No, it certainly does. Do you think with the events like Roswell and the ones you've mentioned that have happened around the world, where we've been able to get our hands on technology, do you think maybe they're perpetrating some type of technological enslavement of us?
Yes. Elon Musk announced, or keeps announcing, whether it's from him or his people, about this plugging us into AI. And that raised alarm bells as far as I'm concerned, because I'm thinking, well, we've got this technology. I'm not saying that we haven't got it on our own merit. It's a possibility. It has been enhanced or derived from an extraterrestrial or unknown crafts. Is they're going now into plugging people, and we have the mobile phones, which, as we know, that everyone is so addicted to. Come on, let's be honest. Even I go out and people are just looking at them. They're mesmerized by these digital demons, as I call them, demons. They are handy in one respect, but vile in another. I think because we were born in an age before this, Dean. We didn't have mobile phones, or we didn't have the internet or technology like that, so we can see through our own eyes what's going on. But to suddenly then announce that not only are we going to be able to have them, but we're going to have them in our heads or plugged into them, because that's what they are, basically computers inside your heads, all connected to AI, is disastrous. Now, I admire Elon Musk, absolutely admire him. He's a gentleman and a clever man, but he is really pushing the boat when he suggests, and others probably too, that we should plug people into a computer. We should not. The thing is that is it possible that they are unwittingly or unknowingly, or they're, what's the word I can use, propelled to go that step further and think, well, with this technology we now have, let's plug them in. And then when you plug people in, it's going to be a lovely, wonderful incentive, but it is control. If they have control of your wheels, that's it, we're finished. It's plugging us into something. Is it what these things wanted? If it is, then they're damn patient, very patient. And that's the nasty thing about it. It seems to be very patient. And silence, is disturbing. They crash these things, and then the scientists recover them. They evidently look at them or analyze them. Of course they would. I would. I want to know what makes them tick. They probably derived equipment or technologies from it, which is then moving us even forward further. And then through that, we're now getting to the stage where people are alarmingly announcing, let's plug us into a supercomputer. Now, I have stated that we don't have true AI yet, as far as we know. People keep saying on there, AI, this is AI. No, we haven't got true AI yet. We'll have it, absolutely. We will definitely have AI when computers can think for themselves. That's what AI means, artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence, it means they can clone thought, or they can think for themselves. They can process data so fast they become more or less a sentient being. But the trouble with that is when we delve down that road,
they won't need us.
That's right. When you create the first thinking computer, my wonderful grandfather, always said to me, when you get older, you'll see the first thinking computer. They will develop it. And I've never forgotten what he said. I don't think we will in our lifetime, Philip and I, or ourselves, Dean. I don't think we're going to see the true thinking computer, but certainly they'll get close. But certainly when they reach the quantum realm, they will develop them. And when they develop one, they'll develop more and more. And the trouble with that is with AI, is this is what they're referring to first. Elon Musk stating, plug us in first. Yeah, get us into the first phase of it, where it is not true AI, but they're controlled by people, because programming is by us all. It's done by humans.
I mean, I remember, clearly watching The Terminator for the first time back in the early '80s and thinking, this is far fetched, but it's good entertainment. But
yes, that's right.
We're almost there.
Yes, that's right. I mean, I'm not denouncing the systems we have are incredible. The computer technology is unbelievable. We have VR and everything, virtual reality and everything. But this is stage one of when we go up the ladder. When we're plugged in, as Elon Musk wants us to, they can upgrade the program. And certainly when they do that, and the computers can think for themselves, who becomes the master and who becomes the slaves. I mean, most of us, I think, know. I mean, you don't have to be an Einstein to know where our future is going. This is where they will take it, and they won't have any word against it, because even with governments, they can implement laws, and we can cry wolf, we can shout and holler, but they will have their way, always. But the thing with this AI, when we're connected to it, it will look very pretty. It'll make it look very appealing. You can visit wonderful worlds in VR in your head. You can see the news in your head. You can hear music, whatever you want. You can contact your friends. You can be on there 24/7. They're going to do something that will entice everyone. And the alarming thing is, some people have said how wonderful it sounds. I'm horrified, Dean.
Yeah.
I'm totally horrified, because is this the final prison we're aiming for? Not a physical prison, but the worst of it, a mental prison. They don't need tanks or aircrafts to bomb us anymore. They're in our heads, and that's the worst thing imaginable. And that is what I consider to be totally, I'm not religious, mark of the beast. That is mark of the beast, when they start chipping us, or putting AI, as they call it. It's not true AI at the moment. They haven't developed true AI. It's going to take some time. Well, they'll do it. Absolutely, they'll do it. They'll accomplish it. There's no stopping them. But when they put this in us, is a very worrying thing. And could it be that these things who dropped these ships in a dramatic fashion to look so innocently smashed, the pilots have, haphazardly knocked it into a hillock, or it's hit by a lightning? Could it be that this is what was intended by a power that we have not yet realized? It makes you think, doesn't it? It makes you think.
In the book The Digital Demon, you talk about, you devote time to talking about the reptilians,
Yes.
and then you talk about the greys. So for the benefit of our audience, are we talking about these races of aliens in a benevolent or a malevolent light?
I take the evil approach because, there are the cases I've read, certainly of the reptilians, doesn't bode well with people. They don't speak very well of them at all. I mean, there's some, perhaps there could be some that are nice, I suppose, but the majority on the scale of that, no, they're quite awful things. I have read a lot about them. I've also seen this idea of bloodlines running through families, like they're part of this reptilian cult.
Mm-hmm.
I don't entirely buy that. That doesn't wash with me. I think they are independent. They wouldn't need us. They could manipulate us, I suppose, to a degree, as people can. But I don't believe it is as thorough as certain people or researchers are saying that it's bloodlines. Perhaps the bloodlines are used to keep the DNA clean for people. Perhaps that's quite possible, or to be some part of bloodline to a religion or something which they believe. But for them to become corporeal through having a trace of this alleged reptilian DNA is impossible. It's not possible. I believe the reptilians are real, and I believe they are corporeal, albeit they can intervene here through interdimensional approach. I would imagine they would be interdimensional. I mean, I've looked into this with the ancient aliens as well. The one that interested me very much, and the directors of antiquity would have you believe that he wasn't real, it's just ethereal. But I tend to believe that actually he was real, and that's Kukulkan, the main deity, the feathered serpent, who was honored by their civilization there at Mesmeric age thousands of years ago. And they dedicated so much that they built statues of him. Even El Castillo, the temple dedicated to Kukulkan, has the stone serpents running down the stairwell, and at both equinoxes through the year, the light gives the illusion of a snake writhing down these incredible staircase. So is it possible that he was real? He was a reptilian. He was reptilian. He would have been Kukulkan. I've developed an interest in him due to me having a past life experience where I may have seen him. I think it was him, but I had no relevance to me at the time. But it just so happens, as things do happen, they pan out. Whereas my mother went to Chichen Itza, I was ignorant of any of the knowledge, even of Kukulkan. I didn't know who. I just saw this geography, and I saw his face and their ship landing. Their ship was not, by the way, a flying saucer. It's very interesting that. It was very odd. But and she came back with these photographs and showed us, and I thought, my goodness, I've been there. And when she even went a step further to show Kukulkan being an ethereal deity, but reptilian, that got me absolutely, oh my goodness. I put two and two together and think he might well have been reality. I'm not saying he was, I'm saying it's quite possible. And looking at the Mayan architecture, certainly the pictures they had where they played pits, I think that's how you pronounce it, pits, the ball game with rubber, they had to lob the ball through hoops mounted quite ridiculously high up in these courts. When you look at the rings that they went through, the architecture of them, there's a serpent entwined over 6 eyes. Well, the 6 eyes of the players, so I imagine each side had 6 players, but they have this serpent running around them, which would show that they were owned or ownership of the reptilians. There's another picture. Wow. I couldn't publish the picture because it belongs to their exhibition or the directors of antiquity. It made me laugh. It's got this picture of the reptiles again there, the Mayan establishment, of a dragon or reptile, and they've got a man's head in his mouth, and they're saying this man's emerging. I won't give the particulars because it's in my book. He's not emerging, he's being eaten. I mean, why is it they always go the other way? They always change everything to suit what they feel is best. Yes, they may be archaeologists and they have a lot of experience. I'm not doubting that, but it's only theory. They only can have theory. Doesn't matter what they state or what they do. It's only their side, their version. This man is being eaten by this statue. The reptilians would be meat eaters, of course it
Yeah,
would.
yeah,
Perhaps they had a taste for human flesh, that perhaps that was part of the bargain, that some of them were sacrificed so they could have them. You don't know. We don't know. I'm not saying they're cannibals, they eat anything, but it certainly would be a dish they'd try.
yeah.
But I've been looking into this, and I will admit, I can't afford to go there yet, to Chichen Itza, but I will. And I think there are this is when we move on to the feathered serpent, that as well might be symbolic feathered serpent. Well, feathered means flight.
Mm-hmm.
So I ascertained in my book that it could be that they flew, these dragons, not literally, but perhaps what they came in flew. So they were given the name, hence feathered serpent.
Right, right, right. Well, what do you make of the Greys then? What's their role in this whole agenda?
Do you know, I can't really attach them to the reptilians at all. I mean, we read these stories about people stating that, their families and, they're built by the reptilians. They might well be, but to me, that doesn't make any sense. They seem to be an independent force, the Greys. They're real, absolutely. I mean, the credible cases I've researched, they certainly are real. But are we seeing them as what they really are? This is another thing. You said yourself very uh, earlier about these different kinds of aliens. We first have fairies and trolls, and we have the Nordics, the blonde-haired, blue-eyed Pleiadians, whatever they call them.
Mm-hmm.
Then they change again to the Greys, the reptilians. Is it possible that, on top of all this speculation, that this thing is a force that can change faces to suit what's in vogue, or how it prefers people to see it? It becomes corporal once it arrives from its interdimensional state, as things would. It becomes corporal, it would be advanced. But is it playing with us? Is it toying with us? Is it making us see what it wants us to see? After Betty and Barney Hill case, I do believe they might have well have come from outer space, because I've spoken to Kathleen Marden, very honoured to speak to her a number of times. And of course, her auntie and uncle were Betty and Barney Hill, the famous adoptees
Mm-hmm.
of the Greys, 1961. And that I do believe, because Betty drew a star map that was shown to her by the leader of the Greys then, when they were captured. He showed her something, a holographic projection in this strange window of a constellation. And she remembered it. And when she drew it out, the astronomers at the time said, no, there's no constellation at the time. But one lady did, Marjorie Fish. She managed to actually locate it. It was a physical star map. So after that incident, is it possible that this thing has copied the Greys, or think, well, they might be in vogue actually, so we use that? But then it's a contradiction to the Roswell, because the Roswell alien beings were little grey men, or allegedly little grey men, weren't they? So I don't know. It's a very fascinating subject, isn't it?
Well, the theory is, of course, there are different types of races within the grey species themselves. Some bad, some good, some in between. So
I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure. I mean,
yeah,
when I've seen people, and I'm sorry I'm going to say this, ridiculous, utterly ridiculous testimony of some of them. And as I said, we will not mention names, and I know exactly who they are, who see reptilians and greys every 5 minutes. They turn a corner, there's a reptilian. They turn a corner, there's a grey. They're saying that they're family members of them. I do not buy it. I don't. We have to approach this, try and approach it diplomatically. I know it's hard. We're dealing with shadows. It's trying to catch shadows, basically, but trying to deal with it in an orderly fashion, if we can. Without the whims and whimsies of others stating that they know what their agenda is. They even go as far as saying what they are. They go and then state what their agenda is, and that's dangerous. No one knows what their agenda is.
mm-hmm.
None of us can say.
Yeah.
No one knows what they're doing. I don't even know what they're doing. The reptilians, we call them evil, but they might appear evil to us, but to them it might be quite normal what they're doing, whatever they're doing.
Yeah. I guess I wanted to ask this question too, but you probably won't have a clue. But I mean, if we're at the whim of the reptilians, or even the Greys, and their ultimate agenda for us is not really going to benefit us all that well. I mean, is it possible there's a race out there that's actually looking out for us, and Because if you've got evil, you've got to have good.
Yes,
So
this
I've always wondered, there must be an alien or a band of races out there that are actually going to step in when something, when things get pretty dire.
Well, you would hope, wouldn't you? I mean, the Second World War proved that absolutely disastrously. There was no help. We hear reports of the Foo Fighters. For the listeners who probably don't know what they are, they're spheres of light that tailed or dogged the aircrafts during battles and things. They just were, to me, I would assume they were electronic eyes or some kind of observation on behalf of something else. They did nothing, absolutely nothing. The Second World War was atrocious. Nothing. Absolutely no intervention. They didn't look out for us then. Millions of people exterminated. They have done nothing. So that judges me through this book of the digital demon. And this is an absolute fact. If people wish to contest it, they can do, but they don't have a losing battle on their hands, because the Second World War, all this talk of an alien presence and the good of mankind, of what they're concerned is they've done nothing. Even now, they've done nothing. It makes me laugh. I hear about recently this idea of a federation, and people actually believe it. It's nice to believe things. If they wish to, they can, but for me, it doesn't. I don't swallow it. This federation that's concerned, this heavenly sort of heavenly force that is, it's of such magnificent might. We've seen nothing of it. It's done nothing. As always, we're just left staring up the sky and nothing happens.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the fallacy of the concern for atomic and nuclear warfare. There's been nothing, absolutely nothing. So it's rather elusive. I'm not an authority on that. And, people they'll frown and think, well, they're star people and they're concerned. How dare you say that, Mr. Kinsella? They're cloning people to revise the human race. Well, if so, why? What the hell for? What on earth would they do it? And if they were, would they tell the clones they were hybrids? Because that's exactly what they seem to be doing. If I was the Greys and I was creating a super race, I wouldn't lay all my cards down on the table. I can tell you that now.
Mm-hmm.
Silence is golden as a weapon to use as their eyes and ears. But these hybrids are coming out and saying, well, we're hybrids. Well, have the Greys told them they're hybrids? And if so, why? Why would they do that? It doesn't make any sense, Dean. This is why we're thrown into so much controversy and speculation. As to what the reptilians want, I don't know. What do they want? I mean, they're here. They seem to interestingly span more an esoterical um, uh, hypothesis, don't they? When we think of them, it's more like demons, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes, they seem to
Well,
be more demonic in nature.
yeah, and the more I hear and the more I think about the fight between good and evil, I keep going back to the fight. Well, not so much the fight, but the war between God's kingdom and Satan. This world belongs to Satan. We're God's creations, but Satan seems to do with us whatever he wants, as long as we let him.
Yes. Yes,
So
that's interesting. I do go down the religious road in my book because I do address the issue of demons. Very much so. Was there a battle with with Lucifer? Was there a, a disagreement? And of course, I suppose if we have them, they would have them. I suppose not everyone's floating on a cloud, wearing a smile.
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
yep.
perhaps Lucifer saw an opportunity of rank here and thought, well, I'll try it, but he lost him. This is another interesting thing. This is where I go into the digital demon. Is it possible that we are looking at an ancient, as you rightly said, Dean, absolutely correct. Are we looking at the remnants of an ancient battle that was actually true? Whereas the Vatican won't say anything much about the demons. They will about God and Jesus Christ. We'll see it all over the place. But demons are painted rather vaguely for us. It's just a hearsay mention. That's it. Was that deliberate? To hide an awful fact that they were actually real, that Lucifer was cast into hell, hence a dimension, or locked into a dimension with his followers, his fallen angels, who he had an army with him, locked up. Could hell be a dimension that the one sealed him in? It's quite possible, isn't it? As we get more advanced or become more advanced, our wonderful scientists are beginning to find alternative theories, especially interdimensional. So it would make sense that hell would be a dimension of sorts, and he's locked up in it. Is it possible they found a crack or a way to get through? Is this also a threat to what some scientists are doing as at CERN. They're not only looking for the God particle. I wouldn't put it past them to believe that they're perhaps looking at it dimensional windows or
Right.
corridors. Yes, they would, because they want to build a bigger one. Well, have they found something? You only build a bigger one if you want more clouds and if you found something. So have they discovered something? Something
Hmm.
that we're not
Interesting.
to
Yeah.
yeah to not let us know about, and of course they know that, like everything else, like the Roswell, it will be swallowed in conspiracy, and they love it because it just muddies the waters. It
Yeah.
muddies everything. But is it possible that they've broken into something and found a window into one of these dimensional worlds? Could it be his? Lucifer's, Satan's? We don't know. We must never. I know we mustn't take things at face value, but we can't denounce the old scriptures either.
No.
When you hear of even if it's Chinese whispers, there must be some truth to it. There must be something to it. Yes, it might be completely rewritten or misconstrued, but there must be something to it, because there's no smoke without fire. You see. So I've even go down this aspect of the digital demon, wondering about whether it's possible this ancient battle was actually real, and they're not as Ikakulkun, they're not as ethereal as we're made to believe, But
Yeah.
it's this has uh, spawned me to look further into the reptilians, to go really into depth. I want to go to Chichen Itza because I believe there's some things missing there. It wouldn't surprise us at all. One thing I'll say about Kukulkan is the fact that the directors of antiquity will certainly denounce it. In fact, they'd probably kick me out if I was sniffing around and they found out that he was an extraterrestrial ancient god,
Hmm.
and they usually and I've said this to my brother Philip recently. What confounds me at the moment is that we have the Egyptians, their incredible pyramids, and they have statues of their gods. They're cats, aren't they?
Yeah.
And dogs. We have Anubis, and you have all Ra and all that. But what if they had, and most of these tribes who have probably met these extraterrestrial gods dedicate a shrine to them or a statue, more than not a statue. So where's Kukulkan? The statue of him, they would have built one of him. So
Yeah,
has
for
that been
sure.
taken? Yeah, has that been
Yep.
removed? Because it's okay to have a cat, it's okay to have a dog, but when you have a man reptile, that's not good. We've got to remove that.
Hmm.
So is it possible? I've even got to the point of thinking or suspecting they've taken certain things down. It wouldn't surprise me, because with history, we're told only what the scholars want us to learn. There's some of it might be true, but certainly from the authors and narrators, we're just reading their own version. They want us to follow a preferred narration, just as the directors of antiquity do. So why not go that step further and actually look down the rabbit hole and think, hang on a minute, there's something wrong here. Those shrines were so incredible. The technology they had was incredible, that it might have been something that helped them or taught
Yep.
them. You see what I mean?
Yep. All right. So the digital demon available at all good bookstores online, Amazon. I mean, you've got a copy there. You might want to hold it up for us and just kind of give us a look at.
Yeah,
There
it's
we
my
go.
artwork of the demons, the reptilians, as they call them. But I'm very proud of this, and it's actually I'm working on another one. This book took me quite a while to write, and it has a lot of my illustrations in there. I
Hmm.
mean, we do need illustration. We need reference, some kind of model. So I've come up with a number of them in the book, but it has opened up a road for me to actually look more into this reptilians, which the second book I'm working on will be about. Certainly with the mind deity and the looking more into the demons aspect, demonology, and also the credible cases,
Right.
some credible cases of people who have encountered them. There's one in here which intrigues me about, in the book. It's to do with a soldier within the barracks. He saw one, but the poor man was so frightened to death, he wishes to remain anonymous at the moment. And that's understandable. He's a credible man. I mean, Christopher Turner, the producer of Don't Mention the Reptilians, he's been an enormous help to me. I'll give a shout out to Christopher Turner, because he actually has written a foreword for this book, and he
Hmm.
produces documentaries on the supernatural. He did Don't Mention the Reptilians. He's done Elusive. He's done quite a number of them with Paul Sinclair, I think a number of shows with him as well. But he's a researcher. So he's helping me with the second book. Recently, I've been in touch with Christopher. And it's through Christopher that I've got some of this information through, from all the wonderful people he's met. So Christopher Turner is actually a blessing to me, because he's really, really a lovely gent. And he has helped me out with some of the cases in here. And one of them was to do with the trooper who saw one of the things. And it's not nice. I mean, these are soldiers.
Yeah.
These are hardcore men.
Yep.
But of course, and what his testimony, when I read his testimony of when he saw these things, I was absolutely mesmerized, because he was horrified. But of course, like me with the doctors, he couldn't just go up and tell his superiors, because his job would be on the line, or they consider him to be utterly cuckoo. So yeah, that's right. Or kept under surveillance. I mean, you know, this really incredible situation to be in, you know, quite unnerving.
Yeah. Ronald, thanks very much for your time. Really appreciate it, and hopefully we'll be speaking again in due course. And the next book, now I'm looking forward to that, because there's going to be a lot of questions after this one, The Digital Demon, and hopefully you'll answer them in the next one.
Thank you, Dean. That's lovely. I think it's going to be called The Infernal Deception, The Reptilians. I haven't decided on a title yet, but it certainly looks more into the, as I said, credible cases, as well as Kukulka, and I want to look further into him, and I'm doing it now, you know, and if I can get there, hopefully within the next year or two, I'd be very happy, because I want to see it for myself. You know, I'll be looking, there's something, before I go, there is something I'm looking for, I saw in this past life regression, a symbol. And when I find that symbol, I can't disclose it to anyone. I will know this is actual fact. This symbol, I can't prove it to anyone, of course, who can. But for me personally, it will satisfy me in knowing that they actually did have an extraterrestrial visitor.
Wow. Wow. So adding more mystery to it all. Ron, thank you.
Thank you, Dean.
Ronald Kinsella joining us today.